Hello and welcome to the new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Divedi, and in this segment today we are going to discuss about India's stand on Myanmar coup d'etat. This topic is important from the perspective of prelims and also from the perspective of GS Mains paper 2. So let's begin with the topics of discussion. But before we begin with the topics of discussion, I would like to enlighten you with a course that is available in Hindi medium for the preparation of UPSC preliminary exams, the quick revision course, which provides you a crash course kind of systematic procedure in just 80 classes. Alright, and if you want to know more about it, it has already been launched. You can visit the Drishti IAS website, you can download the Drishti Learning app or call on the given numbers. Let's move on and talk about our topics of discussion. First of all, we will talk about wine news. Then we will discuss about the status of Myanmar, what has happened in very brief manner. We will talk about India's stand on it. We will also talk about Bimstec summit in reference to what are the stand of different nations of Bimstec when it comes to Myanmar coup d'etat. We will also talk about the role of Asean and the way forward. And in the last of the segment, I am going to ask you a means-based question for answer writing practice. So let's begin with why news. Now, India has stated a fact very clearly that it stands with democratic restoration in Myanmar, but it still has maintained relations, diplomatic relations with the military junta. Now, if we talk about the entire unravelling of chain of events, what has happened, let's talk about Myanmar for a while. Myanmar is a country in Southeast Asia. It is bordered by, as you can see, by Bangladesh, India, China, Thailand, Laos, and if we talk about the water bodies, it is surrounded by Andaman Sea and also Bay of Bengal. Now, the biggest city of Myanmar is Yangon, and I'm going to just write it here, Yangon, biggest city, and Naypyidaw is its capital. So, as we know, this country has been in the news for a long period of time because of the military crackdown on the ethnic minorities of Rohingya, as well as now the usurping of power by putting or detaining the democratic elected leaders of Myanmar, such as Aung San Suu Kyi and her party members, detaining them, and that is why the protesters are very angry. They want restoration of democracy in this country back, and this is the entire issue that we are going to discuss now. So if we talk about the unraveling of chain of events, what has happened? Usurpation of power has taken place in Myanmar. Now Myanmar, which was also known as Burma, and post-independence, it was ruled from 1962 to 2011 by the military. It was ruled by the military, and its name was changed to Myanmar in the year 1989 to shred off the colonial reference, and then it came to be known as Myanmar. And as it was ruled from 1962 to 2011, after it got independence from Britain in 1948, there was a hold of military power in Myanmar. So military and Myanmar are historically tied. And then after that, we saw ushering of a new regime, democratic regime in 2011, and a democratically elected party came into being. Now, if we talk about the recent chain of events, on February 1st, when the coup d'etat, the usurping of power by military stronghold took place, it actually threw the entire Myanmar country into chaos. And what actually happened? It was actually, this entire chain of events was simulated by this theory of the military of Myanmar. The elections were not free and fair, and the opposition was demanding a rerun of elections, and the opposition party was actually not in favor of the landslide victory of the National League of Democracy, the National Democratic League, which won the election by landslide. And that is why it had a theory that this election was not free and fair. The opposition was backed by the military, and after that, before the beginning of the parliamentary session, the usurping of power took place. And now who is in charge after the democratic leaders were detained? Now if we talk about the commander-in-chief of Myanmar, Min Aung Hlaing, he has held his position in the Myanmar military since a long period of time. The stronghold is such that it is unshreddable, and he is in power right now. And after that, the protests grew because the crackdown was such that it started actually targeting ethnic minorities, and also the Myanmarese people do not want to be under the military regime, and they have protested. This protest is being seen as more stronger than the 2007 and 8 protests of saffron protest, we call it, when the monks protested against the military regime. Now if we talk about the current protests, they want the restoration of democratic procedure, democratic system in Myanmar, and the protesters are bankers, government officials, students. So these are the protesters, and the deadliest day came into being on 27th March when more than 100 people died in a day, and these are actually official accounts. Unofficially we can imagine, and even children were killed in the crackdown. The Myanmar military is using water cannons, bullets and whatnot to keep the people away from each other so they do not get united and protest against the military. And if we talk about India's stand, India has maintained relations with military. India did say that they were actually concerned about the coup d'etat and the outflow of migrants, especially the ethnic minorities from Myanmar, but it did not at all, with very strong overtones, it did not condemn the military because they want to have a diplomatic tie with the military. Now, in the entire northeastern region, which sees a lot of rebellion, which sees a lot of disturbances, the Myanmarese military has been in help of India to keep them or to curb them down. So that is why this may be one of the reasons. Also, it has recently made a comment, kindly take a screenshot if you can. We condemn any use of violence. We believe that the rule of law should prevail. We stand for the restoration of democracy in Myanmar, and we have urged the release of political prisoners and supported any attempts at resolving the current situation, including through the efforts of Asean. Now, this statement was made by the official spokesperson of Ministry of External Affairs. So here you can see there is a condemnation of violence, and rule of law was referred because India is a strong believer when it comes to rule of law, good governance, democracy. Also, they stand for the restoration of democracy in Myanmar. That means it does not want to see a military rule in Myanmar, because military rule we are already suffering with a clandestine military rule in one of our neighbors, Pakistan. Also, we have urged the release of political prisoners. That means Aung San Suu Kyi and her party members. Also, supported any attempts at resolving the current situation. India is open to talk with its ASEAN members when it comes to having a more coordinated approach towards Myanmar, and including the efforts of ASEAN we have already discussed. So Bimstec came into being. This is a regional grouping. It came into being in the year 1997 through Bangkok Declaration. Can you please tell me where is its headquarter at? Kindly tell me in the comment segment. So it's Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. Alright, so this is the entire full form of Bimstec. It consists of 5 countries from Asia and 2 from Southeast Asia. Now if we talk about from Asia, they are Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and we have Bhutan, also Myanmar and Thailand. These belong to Southeast Asia. So 5 members from Asia and 2 from Southeast Asia. These countries are actually those countries that have a littoral area sharing of littoral states basically of the Bay of Bengal. So this grouping has been in the news. Why? Because in this particular, if we talk about the summit recently conducted where Myanmar also participated, the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has said that we are going to take this regional grouping to a new height. And in this regional grouping, the final charter, the charter was also adopted in the summit. Whereas if we talk about, there were certain differences when it comes to the charter between Sri Lanka and between Bangladesh and Myanmar. Why? Because of the outflow of Rohingyas from Myanmar who have took refuge in Bangladesh. And if we talk about the 17th Ministerial Summit of Bimstec, there was no straight out declaration or condemnation against Myanmar military crackdown. Now, if we talk about the relations of this regional grouping, since 2017, India has maintained relations with the national security advisors of different countries of Bimstec. Why? In order to have more tangible approach towards terrorism, anti-terrorism activities they are conducting, proper cyber security check and coastal security check. So, of course, Myanmar needs to be on the table. Now, let's talk about India. India has made certain points with respect to Bimstec this year. Kindly have a notice of that. Robust connectivity is an essential prerequisite for economic integration of the Bimstec region and smooth cross-border movement of people and goods. Now, why am I mentioning this over here? Because smooth cross-border movement of people and goods can happen only when there is stability in the region, and Myanmar is unstable as of now because of the outflow of refugees to Thailand and India from Myanmar because of the military crackdown. For this to be achieved, we need a stable Myanmar and a legal framework for smooth connectivity in the region by finalizing a coastal shipping agreement has also been signed, and the motors vehicle agreement also was on the table. Now, if we talk about the role of ASEAN, the role of ASEAN cannot be underestimated because ASEAN has adopted a charter in the year 2008 in which the preamble suggests that we need to be very thorough with the democratic principles, with rule of law, and with many other systems such as good governance. But ASEAN, since a very long time, has supposedly, it has not gone outright to condemn any country under the pretext of non-intervention. It has shredded its non-intervention, its outfit when it comes to Myanmar in the past, when it skipped Myanmar to be the chairman of ASEAN because of mishandling of certain situation in Myanmar. And also when Cyclone Nargis, it devastated Myanmar back in 2008. It also said that the military did not handle it well. So this was something in the past that I needed to refer for you to make understand what can ASEAN play, how ASEAN can play a role in keeping Myanmar stable. And ASEAN should be very clear when it comes to having an approach to keep one of its members in line with the principles. Now, Bimstec also has this problem that it suggests that we will not actually intervene in the internal affairs. But do you think that until and unless a member of a regional grouping is not stable and it can create ruckus in this entire southeastern region, do you really think that non-intervention is an option? So that's something for you to think. Moving on, let's talk about a mains-based question here. So mains-based question is saying that discuss the crises emerging in Southeast Asian region since past few years and how do they affect India. Here you have to be careful with certain events of the past. Rohingya crisis can also be taken into account and how it affects Bangladesh, many countries of India's neighbors, and then you can move on how they have affected India's situation and stand. Humanitarian needs and necessities can also be taken into picture. Alright, so that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.